myth that they came up with.
A controversy which is very much alive today relates to the question whether Ho Chi Minh was primarily an international communist agent, which he certainly was, or a nationalist operating under the guise of an international communist. This is a legitimate question, since in 1946, when his forces, then known as the Vietnamese, were competing with his nationalist rivals, he chose to sign an interim agreement with the French on March 5, 1946, allowing the French to land troops in North Vietnam so that he would have free hands to eliminate his rivals.
The idea that he was totally independent of Russia and of China. This went over very well because people were tired of traditional communism, and they thought that at last they had the real thing with Ho Chi Minh and with communist Vietnamese, who were, I think, quite clever in manufacturing this, probably in some ways quite sincere. What happens to totalitarians who have to sell their products? They finally believe in them themselves, though I'm not sure that Ho Chi Minh at the end of his life really believed this. Don't forget also that people are asked when they visit Hanoi to parade in front of his mummy. And it's a kind of relic comparable to Lenin's relic on the in Red Square. The work has been done carefully and in a fairly original way. It even convinced some Americans like Francis Scott Fitzgerald, who in Fire in the Lake, a very influential book, did admit, I quote her, that Ho Chi Minh was occasionally not criminal, but very, very hard. Now all this goes over, is milled over and again, and there is nothing else available. Today, there are very few people in the West who could defend communism, who could say that all these mistakes and crimes were necessary, but they just do not know Ho Chi Minh's detailed biography, how he got rid of nationalists, how he got rid of so-called Trotskyites, and so on and so forth. It's a painful job to do, but that has to be repeated all the time and researched. Perhaps in 50 years, Vietnamese archives will be available. Also, one has to fight the Vietnamese taste for secret society. And what was more secret than the Lao Dong Party?
Nếu gọi là chiến đấu vì chủ nghĩa dân tộc thì tại sao lại?
If Ho Chi Minh and his Communist Party are said to be fighting for national independence only, then how can one explain the fact that they went after innumerable patriots and killed them? If their aim was only to chase out the colonialists and wrest independence for Vietnam, then why didn't they stop after the Elysee Accords signed by French President Vincent Auriol and former Emperor Bao Dai on March 8, 1949, an accord ratified by the French Parliament at the beginning of 1950, acknowledging the independence of Vietnam within the French Union? Why did Ho Chi Minh keep on with the war, sacrificing hundreds of thousands of people in the crucible of war? Can that be said to be compassionate, especially when independence is already acquired? If they were nationalists, why is it that after taking over only half of the century after the Geneva Agreements in 1954, right away, Ho applied the classical blueprint of a communist party, in exact emulation of communist China, the Soviet Union, and Eastern European countries? They instituted cooperatives, they went after the bourgeois capitalists, they carried out the land reform. An economic history of Vietnam gave the official figure confirming that the land reform victims came to 172,008 people. Other sources give higher figures, up to 500,000. A social revolution by the sword like that provides incontrovertible proof of the application of Marxist-Leninist violence. It can in no way be said to be a nationalist revolution. Furthermore, we now have archival material of Ho Chi Minh's letter to Stalin asking for a go-ahead signal with this bloody affair. That was a lie. At best, one can call it a misunderstanding on the part of some people, while others were deliberately pushing that line interpretation. Ho Chi Minh can be said to be a nationalist only for a few years in his youth before he met with Lenin's writings. During that time, he was still writing for the paper Le Paria, when he was still writing those articles denouncing French oppression in the colony, describing coolies pulling rickshaws for fat colonialists or the people working in the mines. When he had discovered Leninism, he shouted, "Here, the son of truth." In 1924, he saw Stalin and studied at the University of the Toilers of the East. From then on, he no longer remained a nationalist. He was mesmerized by Lenin and controlled by Stalin and became a different person.
The Chinese scholar Chiang Yong-ching wrote in his book, Ho Chi Minh in China, that during the whole time he was in China, Ho Chi Minh did nothing but infiltrated Vietnamese patriotic organizations in order to subvert them and destroy them from inside, drawing their members into the ranks of the communists. He also did away with many patriotic elements who did not follow his line, not excluding his fellow communists.
After the collapse of Japan in World War II, the French, under President de Gaulle, wanted to re-establish their French colonial empire in Vietnam. None of the Vietnamese wanted this, really. Even the emperor, Bao Dai, refused to deal with the French. But Ho Chi Minh and the communists made an alliance with the French. None of the nationalists did this. This was a betrayal of Vietnamese nationalism to serve the interests of the Communist Party. Bringing the French army back to central Vietnam and North Vietnam did not help the Vietnamese people. In fact, if Ho Chi Minh had never brought the French army back, there never would have been the Vietnamese wars. The war against the French and then the later war when he and his party tried to conquer and did conquer South Vietnam. And 2 million plus Vietnamese would not have died, unless one has a different goal than nationalism. Now we have another document which is very important in this connection. We have an order dated September 5th, 1945, of the government of Ho Chi Minh, and it's contained in the Vietnam Yung Quoc Com Bao, the official records of the People's Republic of Vietnam. It's signed by the Minister of Interior, Vong Nguyen Giap, and it says, it's Ra Shaklin, it's an order, and it says this abolishes the Dai Viet Quoc Ya Sa Hoi Dang and the Dai Viet Quoc Yung Dang. The communists are in power, I think, for 3 days, and they abolish rival political parties, nationalist political party.
Finally, if further testimony is required, we can have no more reliable witness than Nikita Khrushchev, who in his memoirs devoted a whole chapter to Ho Chi Minh. Ho Chi Minh enthused Khrushchev was an apostle of the revolution.
Jean Saint-Denis, a man who has negotiated with Ho Chi Minh and the author of Histoire d'une paix manquée, History of a Botched Peace, a man who had numerous contacts with Ho, had this to say about him. When his plans or those of his comrades are threatened, he would not hesitate to resort to brutal measures. On this score,